All right, man, peace. So for those of us that watch the NBA, we know that there has been a very stark upswing in offense this season. And one of the players who has been the most affected by it has clearly been Mr. Draymond Green. We know that it certainly appears as if Draymond has lost a step defensively. And then on top of that, the fact that the referees are calling a much tighter game to cause an ascension in offense, it has affected Draymond. Because this was a player who was an all-star last year, and I believe the year before that as well. He certainly is not going to make the all-star team. And who knows, he might not even make the all-defensive team. Well, Draymond recently decided that he was going to tell the truth as he sees it on how the NBA's change in defensive regulations has affected not just himself, but the league overall. And Richard Jefferson, the former Golden State Warrior and also former Cleveland Cavalier, New Jersey Net, decided that he was going to clap back and tell the truth how he sees it. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
I mean, you can't really play defensively today. So, I don't know. I guess that's what they wanted, right?
Well, bro, if we're going to really keep it funky, there hasn't been real defense in the NBA for about 15 years now. Well, you know what? I'd say probably about 10 years now.
You just got to play. You can't be out there thinking, I can't do this, so I'm going to get a foul. Downstairs, you just got to play. So, we're not out there thinking like, I can't do this, or it's going to be a foul. You just play.
A little split personality there from Draymond.
Well, we know that Draymond Green suffers from multiple personality disorder, Rachel Nichols, allegedly. But once again, Rachel Nichols makes a bit of an incisive comment pertaining to Draymond Green and his psychological layout.
I love Draymond. There was a lot of like, get
off my lawn.
Get off my lawn. My fist at the cloud.
Of course, because Draymond knows that the rules that they've changed defensively are going to affect how much money he's going to make. It's also going to affect how he's perceived across the NBA.
What do you make of that?
He sounds like every defensive lineman, every linebacker, every that's I can't touch quarterback, I can't do this, I don't even know how to play defense anymore. But this, I'll say this: two things. One, no player has benefited more from the new rules than James Harden. Two, no team has benefited more from the new rules than the Golden State Warriors.
Overall, I agree. But you know what? Just to take it to a whole other level, I think that every perimeter player has benefited from the rules changes. Because what we see across the league now is that everybody tries to play the same style of basketball for the most part. Now, will there ever be a paradigm shift back to a more defensive style and closer calls when it comes to how the referees officiate the game? I doubt it. Because a lot of what we see today in the NBA is a direct correlation to the perceived notion that the vast majority of people, not only in America but all across the world, suffer from attention deficit disorder. So they constantly need to see action. The belief is that people cannot sit down and watch a game that's going to end 75-74 and be a defensive struggle. They want to see scoring. And there is a connection between an upswing in scoring in all major sports and viewership. Even in boxing, the version of an upswing in scoring in boxing will be more knockouts. And HBO tried to sell more knockouts over the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years, which also led to a decline in their viewership because they went about it the wrong way. Boxing is a bit different from the other sports, but I understand what they were trying to do. But they did it to the detriment of their overall boxing roster because the number one fighter was Floyd Mayweather, and he was never known as a one-punch knockout artist. They figured they could let him go and try to build up their boxing roster in the image of Rock'em Sock'em Robots, and it failed. When we look at baseball, when they decided to juice the baseballs and the players also juiced up in the mid-90s or early 90s, that's when we saw baseball at its peak. Baseball has never been more popular than it was in the mid to late 90s when the guys were roided up. Right now, football is back on the uptick because of the increased scoring. We're also seeing it in basketball. So Draymond is going to have to improve his offensive game. That's what that means. Because right now, it's just a three-point shooting contest every night.
So Draymond, we don't care. You got Steph Curry, you got all those guys, no one can touch them, it's fine.
I do think that the game has changed, especially with how they protect the shooter on the perimeter, but I think it's still a whole new world when it comes to the paint. There are a lot of players right now that are really flexing their muscle defensively, right? Let's talk about Jarrett Allen, who most people didn't know his name until he blocked LeBron James having a defensive season. Giannis.
Right, I get your point, but that's a bit different from what Draymond Green does. Draymond Green, I mean, he actually plays players out on the floor. His issue right now is that his lateral movement is not what it once was. He's starting to play defense more with his hands. When we're talking about a Jarrett Allen, that's a shot blocker. Players like him and a Rudy Gobert, I mean, that's all about verticality.
Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kawhi Leonard, these are all guys that are playing on both ends of the floor. So while, yes, okay, it's hard to guard the shooters these days and it's causing a point.
Steph Curry's issue is that he's never had good lateral footwork. He's never had good lateral movement. And I've noticed a slight loss of a step in Steph as well. People forget Steph is going to be 31 this year. He's got probably about 3 more years left as being a primetime player. And then after that, who knows what his role is going to be. Or maybe he'll still be as effective because of the way that the NBA is right now. It's basically a 3-point shooting contest, so that might add more years to his career like it has a Tom Brady in football where it's a lot less physicality.
Point explosion. I do think that some players are separating themselves, even Russ and PG. You know, for OKC and their defense, it's really why they're thriving.
I'm a firm believer that if you show the referees that you're going to play defense the same way every possession, they may call fouls on you early, but once they get used to your physicality, once they become accustomed to your tactics defensively, they're going to start to let more things go. That's why we see players like a Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, now even a Russell Westbrook, who was never known as a good defensive player, but who's now playing better defense. The referees allow much more to slide when it comes to them because they see that they're consistent with their defensive tactics.
I agree, and it falls back on that same thing that just no team benefited more.
When you have this new emphasis, look, they have a new emphasis with the rules. They didn't change the rules. They have a new emphasis for the referees this season. There's no doubt about that. But look, this seems to me to be a lot more about the fact that Draymond wanted Defensive Player of the Year this year.
That's exactly what it was about, Rachel Nichols. That's exactly what it was about. He wanted Defensive Player of the Year this year, and he's not going to get it. Not unless he has an unbelievable second half of the season.
This year to give him that bump in his contract, and he is trying to explain right now why he is not in contention for that. We all know how important that was to him. We all know why, and you know it's not happening. Let's talk about
But anyway, that's basically it. We'll see how things go when it comes to the NBA defenses and how they're called. Normally, the referees allow much more physicality as the season starts to wane and we head into the playoffs. So maybe Draymond will become much more of an impact player as the referees start to incrementally alter their standards for foul calling. So peace.